I want you to picture something. We are going back in time. We are standing in East Africa, and it is roughly 300,000 years ago.
And we are talking about a totally different world here.
Right. The sun beating down on you is absolutely brutal. You look around, and the ground is baked. It's cracked, radiating heat. The air is so dry, it feels like it could split your lips in seconds.
Which is an incredibly harsh environment to try and survive in.
Exactly. And as you look at the people around you, at every single human being on the planet at this point in history, you notice a universal truth. Every single one of them, with absolutely no exceptions, has deep, dark, rich, melaninated skin.
And, stripping away our modern context is really the only way to actually understand this. We carry so much contemporary baggage when we talk about human pigmentation.
Definitely. It's so loaded today.
Right. But in that moment, 300,000 years ago, there was no social construct. There was only the brutal physical reality of the sun.
And that physical reality is our starting point for this deep dive. Today we are pulling from an incredible excerpt from the YouTube channel Everything.POV. It's a video titled The Ancient Human Mutation That Changed Everything.
It's such a fascinating piece of content.
It really is. And our mission today is to completely reframe biology, geography, and the actual literal function of the skin you are sitting in right now. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
I want you to think of this not as a dry biology lesson. Think of it like we are decoding an ancient, highly encrypted survival manual. And it's a manual that every single one of us carries around on the outside of our bodies.
I love that analogy because changing the lens from social identity to a story of, raw environmental adaptation, it forces us to look at the cellular mechanics.
So we have to go molecular.
Exactly. To understand why human skin changed so dramatically across the globe, we have to look under the hood and understand why it was universally dark in the first place.
Because it wasn't just about, getting a tan.
No, not at all. That brutal sun in East Africa wasn't just making people hot. It was actively threatening the survival of our species on a molecular level.
Right, because the sun emits ultraviolet radiation. And specifically, we're talking about UVB rays.
Right.
Now, most of us just associate UVB with getting a bad sunburn or, maybe premature aging.
Yeah, buy your SPF moisturizer and you're good.
Exactly. But the source material highlights something far more insidious. These rays penetrate the skin and circulate through the fine blood vessels just beneath the surface. And as they do, they hunt down and destroy folate in your bloodstream.
And folate is the absolute linchpin here.
Wait, folate, like the prenatal vitamin?
Yes, exactly that. It's a B vitamin, and it is absolutely non-negotiable for human reproduction and embryonic development. The stakes could not possibly be higher.
Wow, okay.
I mean, when we talk about folate deficiency in the modern world, we're usually just talking about, grabbing a bottle off the pharmacy shelf. But in our ancient environment, without enough naturally occurring folate, cellular division basically grinds to a halt.
So what does that actually mean for an ancient human?
It means pregnancies fail, infant mortality spikes, and children who do survive are often born with catastrophic neural tube defects, things like spina bifida.
That is wild. I always thought of folate as just like a modern supplement. You're saying it is the literal foundation of human survival.
Oh, absolutely.
So if your folate gets wiped out by ambient UV radiation, it's not just a health hiccup. Your specific genetic line ends right there in the dirt.
Exactly. The sun acts as a massive evolutionary filter. Any ancient human born with a mutation for lighter skin in equatorial Africa, they simply didn't survive long enough. Or they couldn't reproduce successfully enough to pass on those genes.
Because the sun was just constantly destroying their folate.
Right. Natural selection is incredibly simple and incredibly ruthless, and that is where melanin steps in.
Okay, so melanin is the shield.
You got it. The denser the melanin in your skin, the more of that deadly UV radiation is absorbed, scattered, and neutralized. And it does all of this before the radiation can ever reach the folate circulating in your blood.
Wow. So melanin isn't just an umbrella. It's like a high-tech biological lead apron, protecting the most vital reproductive blueprints of the human species.
A lead apron perfectly calibrated for the highest UV index on the planet, yeah. Equatorial Africa experiences intense, direct sunlight year-round.
Right, there's no winter where the sun just goes away.
Exactly, there is no winter reprieve. Dense melanin was the sole difference between continuing the human story and going totally extinct.
Which, okay, that raises a massive biological paradox for me.
Oh.
Yeah, if the sun is this relentless, folate-destroying laser beam, why didn't human beings just evolve to block it out entirely? Why do our bodies need the sun to penetrate our skin at all?
That is the million-dollar question. Sunlight possesses this duality that created a massive biological crisis when humans finally started to migrate.
Because it does something else, right?
Yeah. While UVB rays destroy folate, they also trigger a vital, life-sustaining chemical reaction in the skin. When UVB hits the epidermis, it converts a specific cholesterol into vitamin D.
Okay, vitamin D. We hear about vitamin D constantly, like drink your fortified milk, get your 20 minutes of sunshine.
Right, it's everywhere.
But it honestly feels like one of those vague health buzzwords. What is the actual mechanism? Like, why is it so critical that our bodies demand we expose ourselves to a radiation source that is simultaneously trying to destroy our reproductive capabilities?
Well, vitamin D is actually more of a hormone than a simple vitamin, and it dictates massive systemic functions. For one, it regulates calcium absorption in the gut.
Wait, really? It controls calcium?
Yep. Without it, your body simply cannot build or maintain a skeleton. It also supports the immune system's ability to fight off deadly pathogens. In fact, vitamin D receptors regulate over 200 different genes in the human body.
Over 200 genes.
Yeah.
From sunshine.
Exactly. Deprive an early human of vitamin D, and the consequences are devastating. Children develop rickets, where their bones literally soften and bend under their own body weight.
Oh, that sounds awful.
It is. Pelvic bones deform, which makes childbirth fatal. Immune systems basically collapse.
So in East Africa, early humans must have hit an evolutionary sweet spot. If melanin acts as a shield against the sun to protect the folate, it's also actively blocking the sun from making that vital vitamin D.
Exactly. It is a masterclass in evolutionary calibration forged over millions of years.
Just balancing on a knife's edge.
Pretty much. The dense melanin blocks exactly enough UV to protect the circulating folate. But because the sun is so incredibly intense and direct at the equator, just enough UVB still manages to punch through that shield to synthesize the perfect amount of vitamin D.
It's perfectly balanced for that specific latitude. But then the human story shifts.
Right, because we didn't stay there.
Exactly. But 100,000 years ago, a remarkably small group of humans, and some estimates say as few as 150 people, walked north. They moved through the Middle East, into Central Asia, and eventually up into Europe.
Leaving the equator behind.
Right. They're leaving the brutal equatorial sun and walking into environments with cold, gray skies and massive seasonal shifts.
And obviously the temperature change is obvious, but the fundamental physics of the sun shifted beneath them.
How so?
Well, when you move to northern latitudes, sunlight hits the Earth at an oblique, slanted angle. It has to pass through a much thicker slice of the Earth's atmosphere, and that atmosphere scatters and filters out a massive amount of the UVB rays.
So they're getting way less of that radiation.
Drastically less. In the winter months, in places like northern Europe, the amount of UVB hitting the ground drops to virtually zero.
Okay, wait, let me play devil's advocate here, based on what a layperson might picture.
Sure, go for it.
If I'm migrating into Ice Age, or even just wintertime Europe, it's freezing. I'm wrapped head to toe in thick animal skins just to avoid freezing to death.
Right.
So how does skin color even factor in if absolutely none of my skin is exposed to the sun for 6 months of the year anyway?
That intuition points to exactly why the biological crisis was so severe.
Oh, because they were covered up.
Yes. Because they were wrapped in animal skins, the only surface area available to absorb sunlight was their face and maybe their hands.
Oh, wow. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, that tiny amount of exposed skin had to do 100% of the heavy lifting for vitamin D synthesis. What's fascinating here is the sudden, catastrophic tipping point this created.
Let me guess. The melanin.
Exactly. The exact same dense melanin that was a life-saving shield in Africa instantly became a fatal liability in northern Europe.
Because it was still doing its job. It was still blocking whatever tiny sliver of UV light was actually making it through the winter atmosphere.
Exactly. The weak northern sun, combined with the heavy melanin shield and the fact that they were bundled up in furs, meant these early migrants were synthesizing almost zero vitamin D.
Which means the rickets, the bone issues.
Right. Their children's bones didn't form correctly. Their immune systems couldn't fight off respiratory infections in the damp cold.
Wait, so when lighter skin mutations eventually appeared, it wasn't because light skin was, like, better or representing some higher rung on the evolutionary ladder.
Not at all.
It was literally just a desperate biological hack to keep kids' bones from collapsing during a European winter.
That's exactly what it was. It was pure survival arithmetic. Occasionally, just by random genetic chance, someone would be born with a mutation that disrupted their melanin production.
Which in Africa would have been
A
terrible.
death sentence, honestly, via folate destruction.
Yeah.
But in Northern Europe, it was a massive advantage.
Because they needed every drop of sun they could get.
Exactly. They had less melanin, so their small patches of exposed skin could absorb what little UVB was available. They synthesized more vitamin D, their bones grew strong, their immune systems held up, and they survived the winters to reproduce.
That makes perfect sense. It perfectly explains the biological why. But the source material brought up something about the when of this whole process, and honestly, the timeline completely shattered my assumptions.
Oh, the timeline is where the traditional historical narrative completely falls apart.
Because we naturally assume evolution is this slow, methodical crawl. Like you think about early humans migrating 100,000 years ago, you assume they got to Europe, and over the course of 80,000 or 90,000 years, they slowly faded out generation by generation, eventually becoming the white Europeans we picture in history books.
Yeah, that's the standard assumption. But a geneticist named Matt and his team at Harvard decided to actually test that assumption.
Right.
They extracted ancient DNA from the remains of early Europeans to see exactly when this genetic shift happened.
And how do they even do that, looking at DNA from tens of thousands of years ago?
Well, paleogenetics has absolutely revolutionized our understanding of the past. By extracting DNA from the petrous bone, which is this really dense part of the skull that preserves genetic material incredibly well, they can read the exact genetic code of someone who died tens of thousands of years ago.
That's just wild to me.
It's amazing science, and what they found regarding skin pigmentation rewrote the textbooks entirely.
Because they tracked down the major gene responsible for lighter European skin, which is SLC24A5.
Yep, that's the one.
And they discovered that it did not slowly evolve over 100,000 years. This mutation swept through the European population a mere 8,000 years ago.
It's stunning. That number is almost impossible to comprehend in evolutionary terms. 8,000 years ago is practically yesterday.
Right.
It means the early Europeans, the ones who built the first settlements, the ancient humans who painted those famous breathtaking scenes in the caves of Lascaux in France, they were significantly darker skinned than the Europeans living in those exact same areas today.
See, here's where it gets really interesting for me. How does an entire continent's genetic makeup shift that rapidly?
It's a great question.
I mean, evolution usually takes millions of years. If human history is a marathon, this adaptation didn't happen during the first 25 miles. It happened in the last few feet before the finish line.
It really did.
What triggered such a violent, rapid biological sweep just 8,000 years ago?
Well, the prevailing theory points to a massive lifestyle shift, specifically the agricultural revolution.
Wait, farming changed our skin color.
Basically, yeah, think about it. For tens of thousands of years in Europe, early humans were hunter-gatherers. They were eating diets heavily reliant on fish, animal livers, and wild game.
And those foods are packed with dietary vitamin D.
Exactly. So even with dark skin in a low sun environment, they were compensating by literally eating their vitamin D.
Oh, I see where this is going. But 8,000 years ago, they started farming.
Right. They transitioned to agriculture. They started relying on cereal crops, wheat, barley, grains.
Which have zero vitamin D.
None. Suddenly, the dietary safety net vanished overnight. The entire burden of vitamin D synthesis was shifted entirely back onto their skin.
Wow.
At that exact moment, having lighter skin wasn't just a slight advantage anymore. It became an absolute life or death necessity.
So it forced the issue.
Completely. The selection pressure became so intense that the SLC24A5 gene swept through the population at a breakneck speed. It is literally one of the fastest evolutionary changes ever documented in the human genome.
The idea that European light skin is heavily tied to the invention of farming is just brilliant.
It's a completely different way to look at history, isn't it?
It really is. But that makes me wonder, if this specific gene swept through Europe so aggressively, what about the rest of the world?
What do you mean?
Well, did everyone who moved north just catch this exact same SLC24A5 genetic wave? Like, East Asians also moved into cold northern climates.
Ah, right. And biology rarely solves a problem the exact same way twice.
So it wasn't the same gene.
No. The story expands here from a European anomaly into a global marvel. East Asians migrated to northern latitudes and faced the exact same environmental pressures. Cold climates, bundled clothing, oblique sun angles, and a desperate physiological need for more vitamin D.
And their populations also developed lighter skin.
Yes. But they didn't use the European gene to do it. They achieved lighter skin completely independently, utilizing totally different genetic mutations and biological pathways.
Okay, so it's like two completely different engineering teams, one in Europe, one in Asia, being told to build a bridge over the exact same river.
I love that.
They
Yes.
don't talk to each other, they don't share notes, they use entirely different blueprints and materials, but they both end up getting you safely to the other side.
That is the textbook definition of convergent evolution. You have two geographically separated populations facing the identical environmental threat, and their bodies arrive at a remarkably similar physical solution through entirely divergent genetic mechanisms.
Yeah, and if we connect this to the bigger picture, that completely dismantles the idea of race as a fixed biological category.
Oh, it completely shatters the entire construct.
Because there is no single light race or dark race in our DNA.
Exactly. Lighter skin is not one single gene, and it is
Yeah.
certainly not one single event in human history.
It's multiple events.
Yeah. It is dozens of separate, parallel biological experiments that evolution ran simultaneously across completely different human populations all over the globe.
So every shade of human skin is simply a different biological answer to the exact same environmental question.
Right. How much sun is hitting me right now, and what do I need to do to survive it?
So what does this all mean? We started this deep dive looking at a brutal, sun-baked landscape in Africa 300,000 years ago. We've traced the destruction of folate, the synthesis of vitamin D, the migration into the icy European winters, the sudden shock of the agricultural revolution, and the parallel evolutionary tracks of Asia.
It's a massive journey.
It is. And the core takeaway from all of this incredible science is profound. Your skin, whatever shade or color it happens to be, is not an identity.
Not at all.
It's not evidence of social division or hierarchy. It is a biological document. It is a literal report card recording exactly where your ancestors live, what specific environmental threats they faced, and the incredible, desperate lengths their bodies went to just to keep them alive long enough to produce you.
And honestly, reading that document changes how you look at every person you meet.
It really does. If you have dark skin, your biological report card says your ancestors survived an equator that was actively trying to destroy their DNA, and a high-tech melanin shield was the only thing standing between them and extinction.
Right.
If you have light skin, your report card says your ancestors survived a frozen, sunless north where that same melanin would have starved them of the vitamins they needed to build their skeletons, forcing a radical genetic hack. Neither is stronger. Neither is more evolved. They are both perfect answers to completely different environments.
But, this leaves us with a fascinating, almost unsettling paradox today.
Yes, so.
Well, for hundreds of thousands of years, the sun ruthlessly sculpted our biology to ensure our survival. It was an unbreakable bond between human beings and the climate they inhabited. But look at how we live right now.
Inside, mostly.
Exactly. We spend the vast majority of our lives indoors. We fly across the globe in a matter of hours, moving from the equator to the Arctic without a second thought.
That's true.
We take vitamin D supplements with our morning coffee. We slather on SPF 50 sunscreen before we go outside. For the first time in the entire history of the human species, we have actively broken the biological link between the climate we live in and the survival of our genes.
We've basically opted out of the natural selection process that built us.
We engineered our way right out of it, so it raises a massive question about our future.
Teaches.
What happens to the human report card now? 10,000 years from now, will our skin color still tell the ancient story of the sun, or will it tell the story of a species that finally learned to control its own environment?
Wow. That is an incredible thought to end on. We went from carrying an encrypted survival manual forged in the cracked earth of East Africa to a future where we are quite literally writing the manual ourselves. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the world around you, keep reading the incredible stories hidden in plain sight, and we'll catch you next time.